Good morning, everybody. What a beautiful day. Again, every day is a beautiful day when you make it a beautiful day. And welcome to some reading with Menno, because reading is really important and it gives us so many different advantages and benefits. I just made a video about the cognitive benefits and the ability to sleep better and to be able to make better connections. So it's really, really awesome. And the plan was to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I only have the Chinese version at the moment, which is actually good because I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I'm in a language group, so I am studying. Well, I'm the person that organizes these language masterminds together with a very good friend of mine over in Spain, Jesse Swede, and I'm gonna maybe start reading this and doing a technique that he uses called hunting for language. I will see if I can add a link or get in touch with me if you'd like to know more about it. And good morning, Mr. Blount. So that is really good because that means that I already know it a little bit and can start studying the Chinese, which is awesome. But in the meantime, until I have the English version of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'm going to be reading this book, which is also a really good book. It's called The Art of Thinking Clearly. And we have been having a lot of fun with this one. Let's have a look. And I think we're up to chapter 8, Confirmation Bias, part 2. And the title is called Murder Your Darlings. Okay. So in the previous chapter, we met the father of all fallacies, the confirmation bias. We are forced to establish beliefs about the world, our lives, the economy, investments, our careers, and more. We deal mostly in assumptions, and the more nebulous these are, the stronger the confirmation bias. Whether you go through life believing that people are inherently good or people are inherently bad, you will find daily proof to support your case. So in the last chapter, it was talking about the fact that we only tend to look for information that supports what we already believe. And Charles Darwin talked about the fact that it's really important to look up more information about things that you might not necessarily agree with. And it's really, really important. And I do the same thing. I don't think I'm perfect at it, definitely not. I often get told that I'm not perfect at it. But for example, when I go to Google and I do a search, I will actually start to search things, but I will open up things that I also disagree with just to have a look and see what it says and what it means. Okay, so both parties, the philanthropists and the misanthropists, simply filtered disconfirming evidence to the contrary, and focus instead on the do-gooders and dictators who support their worldviews. Astrologers and economists, holy moly, how did I not get that one? Operate on the same principle. They utter prophecies so vague that any event can substantiate them. In the coming weeks, you will experience sadness, for in the medium term, the pressure on the dollar will increase. But what is the medium term? What will cause the dollar to depreciate? And depreciation measured against what? Gold, yen, pesos, wheat, residential property in Manhattan, the average price of hot dogs? Religious and philosophical beliefs represent an excellent breeding ground for the confirmation bias. Here in soft, spongy terrain, it grows wild and free. For example, worshippers always find evidence for God's existence, even though he never shows himself overtly, except to illiterates in the desert and in isolated mountain villages. It is never to the masses in, say, Frankfurt or New York. Counter-arguments are dismissed by the faithful, demonstrating just how powerful the confirmation bias is. So there are things that are beyond our understanding that we need to be open to. And if we only believe in one thing, or if we listen to somebody that's going to say something in a very vague way, then that can be very challenging and very bad for us. So we need to be really open to what is really going on in the world. And it's not so much that we need to protect ourselves from the confirmation bias. It's more that we need to be open to and think about and look towards what is out there and how to put that. So we need to be aware of it. That's what I'm thinking of. We need to be aware of the confirmation bias so that we are able to keep an eye on it and make sure that we're looking at both sides of the story to really figure out what we really believe, not just what we already believe. There we go. That's what I was going to say. No professionals suffer more from the confirmation bias than business journalists. Often they formulate an easy theory, pad it out with 2 or 3 pieces of evidence and call it a day. For example, Google is so successful because the company nurtures a culture of creativity. Once this idea is on paper, the journalist corroborates it. I can't read today. What's going on? Corroborates it by mentioning a few other prosperous companies that foster ingenuity. Rarely does the writer seek out disconfirming evidence, which in this instance would be struggling businesses that live and breathe creativity, or conversely, flourishing firms that are utterly uncreative. This is a very important part of this book and this chapter. So especially in business, we will very often look at the successful businesses and we want to do the same things. And there's a thing in NLP called modeling, which is very important, very good, that we can use in order to be able to increase our own success. But we have to realize that there are also people who are doing the same thing, who are also modeling these companies, but are not successful. And that's something that we need to look into. So that is very interesting. Both groups have plenty of members, the successful and the unsuccessful, doing the same things or similar things. But the journalist simply ignores them. If he or she were to mention just one, the storyline would be ruined. See, there we go. Self-help and get-rich-quick books are further examples of blinkered storytelling. Their shrewd authors collect piles of proof, pump up the most banal of theories, such as meditation is the key to happiness. Any reader seeking disconfirming evidence does so in vain. Nowhere in these books do we see people who lead fulfilled lives without meditation, or those who, despite meditation, are still sad. The internet is particularly fertile ground for the confirmation bias. To stay informed, we browse news sites and blogs, forgetting that our favored pages mirror our existing values, be they liberal, conservative, or somewhere in between. Moreover, a lot of sites now tailor content to personal interests and browsing history, causing new and divergent opinions to vanish from the radar altogether. This is also really important. So the way that social media works is that it gives us what we want. And what we want is not often what we need or what's good for us, because what we need and what is good for us is to have opinions that are not only what we already believe. We need to stay open-minded. We need to be able to see other perspectives. We need to be able to look at things in a different way. Otherwise, we're going to keep doing the same things in the same way. So as Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, which is what social media is unfortunately causing us to do. We inevitably land in communities of like-minded people, further reinforcing our convictions and the confirmation bias. Literary critic Arthur Quiller Couch had a memorable motto: murder your darlings. This was his advice to writers who struggled with cutting cherished but redundant sentences. What is going on with my reading this morning? This is crazy. This is crazy, but that's okay. Okay. So Quiller Couch's appeal is not just for hesitant hacks, but for all of us who suffer from the defeating silence of assent. To fight against the confirmation bias, try writing down your beliefs, whether in terms of worldview, investments, marriage, healthcare, diet, career strategies, and set out to find disconfirming evidence. Axing beliefs that feel like old friends is hard work, but imperative. Now, this is one of, it's a really interesting one, because on the one hand, it's really important, and on the other hand, it's something that we don't really take action on. So I want to share something that you might be able to do with regards to this one. And that is not just write down what your beliefs are, but have to think about what your beliefs are, but also to do Google searches today and look at every single, maybe the first 10, regardless of whether you think they're good or not. Just look at the first 10 results and open up just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Don't select which ones, just the first top 10 that come up, and read through them and see whether you're able to start seeing a different perspective on things. And there was something else that I was going to say, but I can't remember exactly what that was going to be. But Yes, I was going to tell an example from a book called, a tiny little book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's a really famous story. And it's about a gentleman who worked for he had a petrol station, gas station, to those of you in America. And probably most other people that learn American English. Anyhow, so he had a petrol station, gas station, and he hated the franchises because all of a sudden there were franchises and he had a small little shop. And he went to a debating class and they forced him to argue for the franchise. So he went to the franchise and asked them about the advantages of franchising and how it didn't affect his business and what was good about it. And he was able to come up with a whole list. And this is the way in which you can fight the confirmation bias. Actually do a debate for yourself and write down the other side of the story. So if you believe that coronavirus is dangerous, maybe have a look at why you think it might not. If you think that it doesn't really exist, then write down why you think it might and some of the proofs and things like that. So anything that you feel 100% sure of, it's really good to sit down and write the opposing view. Have a debate with yourself and see if you can convince yourself of the opposite of what you believe. So that's a fun little exercise for today. We are going to keep reading this one next time. Let's have a look. Murder Your Darlings. What's the next chapter? The next chapter is going to be authority bias. And the title is Don't Bow to Authority. I like the sound of that one already. And we'll be reading that one tomorrow from The Art of Thinking Clearly. Okay, it was good to see you all. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow for another reading.